When one thinks of Appalachia, they likely resort to stereotypes about rednecks or white trash hillbillies, maybe even Larry the Cable Guy or a mountaineer. Regardless of who you think of, it's never a person of color. Why is it that black people seem to be dissociated from the narratives of Appalachia, even though they've had such a large role in shaping the history of the region? In The Vanishing Appalachian, How to Whiten the Problem, author Leon F. Williams says that, quote, Appalachia has been painted with a broad stroke of a white brush, overshadowing the particular zeal and creative individualism that allows for black Appalachians to bring the most valuable contributions to the region as civic leaders, social welfare professionals, educators, and, under proper conditions, the finest products of Appalachia. However, Williams explains that the black population in Appalachia has been on a devastating decline since the 1960s. When these people of excellence leave the region, Williams says that few are willing to respect the role of the black in Appalachian history. Why are black people migrating out of Appalachia? How much do issues like stereotypes, stigmas, and environmental racism play into this? How much of it is due to a lack of recognition or a whitening of Appalachia? What can be done to highlight how black Appalachians shape the region? And what can be done to encourage them to stay here and continue to benefit it? To get some answers, I interview someone that considers herself to be Appal-African. In doing so, I hope to gain insight about what it means to be black in Appalachia and to understand the problems that they face and what I can do about them. Williams discusses how little has been done to help white people in the region and even less has been done for black people. He discusses how when progressive initiatives in Appalachia do take place and are formed and organized, they seem to leave out black people in the region, aren't catered to their needs. Do you agree or do you disagree with this?
I feel a little middle of the road on this one because I participated in a program in high school called HISTA, Health Science and Technology Academy, that was an initiative program to have students be able to pay for college with a pretty decent scholarship once you completed the program. To qualify for the program, you had to be either African American, first generation college student, from a low income family, or from out of city limits. And so I do think that this program was progressive in trying to focus on African Americans in West Virginia as a focused group, but they weren't the only ones being considered in this process. So while it did cover quite a bit, it didn't really give a specific leg up for African Americans in the Appalachian region specifically.
From here, Megan and I began to discuss the African American experience in Cabell County, Virginia/West Virginia from 1825 to 1870. About a week prior to filming the interview, Megan and I went to the Green Bottom Plantation. When there, I told her what I had learned about the, quote, complex interrelationship between slavery, spoken language, and functional literacy that existed in Cabell County. We discussed how being a port town in a border state would allow for such a fluid exchange of political beliefs and social ideas at the time that the African American experience in Cabell County was undoubtedly unique. So, how did it feel to visit the remains of the Green Bottom Plantation?
It felt really strange to be in a place that was once so populated with people who look like me, who weren't necessarily there on good terms whatsoever, there against their own will, and it to be so vacant now, and so much so that it was cut off to the public. And I really think that that's a space that should be open for everybody to witness and fully immerse in the history.
Megan grew up in Kanawha Valley, also known as Chemical Valley, so I wanted to discuss environmental racism with her in the context of our course material. So, after having seen Chemical Valley and learning about the environmental racism that happened and it impacted so many people in Institute, West Virginia, do you think that you were personally ever a victim of environmental racism? I know you didn't grow up in Institute, but you did grow up in the so called Chemical Valley.
So I wasn't necessarily aware of how populated the Institute area was with Black people during the time of the chemical spill that took place, but I do realize now that that's still what the population looks like. My sister and her family live there now in Dunbar, which is right beside Institute, and I think about how there is a predominant Black community still there, including my sister and her family. So it is concerning. I don't think that I've personally experienced it, but I do think it's probably still taking place right now. I mean, I know it is because I've seen what the people look like there.
I actually took you with me to see the Chemical Valley documentary when it was at the Playhouse. I wanted to know, did you know anything about the tragedy in India or anything about Union Carbide?
So I did not know about either of those things before watching the documentary, which was kind of disturbing to think that I grew up so close to it with such little knowledge of what had happened there. And it's scary to me to know that I've had family work at other chemical plants before and how they could potentially be exposing themselves to these things. But it is really scary. Like, I know growing up, my mom would never let us eat snow. And it sounds really strange, but she would always emphasize how our snow is especially dirty because we live near a chemical plant. So that's something that always stuck with me, and it really reared up in my mind whenever I watched the Chemical Valley documentary.
I also wanted to ask Megan about the Elk River chemical spill that was the subject of the documentary What Lies Upstream. Living in Cabell County at the time, I was mostly unaware of the impact it had on communities along Kanawha Valley. I was also completely disheartened to learn that a lack of state and federal oversight could allow for the water supply of 9 counties in the state to be undrinkable. The documentary shines light on the faults of our government when it comes to protecting the health of its people and the environment. In most cases, people of color are impacted the most. As a means of appeasing lobbyists, families across Appalachia and the nation fall victim to industrial greed. What was your experience with the Elk River chemical spill in 2014? What impact did it have on your family?
So this spill took place while I was home on winter break, and I really remember feeling weird about how I was supposed to go about my life without clean water. I remember us getting lots and lots of containers of water wherever we could find them, brushing our teeth with water bottles. It was really strange, and I think one factor that people don't realize is how long that fear lasted for my community and my family. I remember my sister and her family, I'm not even sure to this day if they will drink the water out of the spigot from their home because there's still that underlying fear that our water still isn't safe.
Yeah, and I think that they have a reason to be suspicious about the water still, because I think that the documentary What Lies Upstream really makes it apparent that, even if we do have regulations in place for these companies like Freedom Industries, if they're not enforced, then it's not doing any good. Finally, I talked with Megan about her Black Appalachian identity and how moving to Huntington and attending Marshall University provided her with a new perspective and more knowledge about Black history in the region. Also, we discuss hope for Appalachia's future in recognizing the contributions of Black Appalachians and what to do to keep them here. Speaking of West Virginia State, as we were previously talking about, why did you decide to come to Marshall University instead?
So like I mentioned before, I'm from the small town of St. Albans, which is just right across the river from State. Had I stayed living at my mom's house and driving across the river to go to State, I would have still been experiencing the same pretty non-diverse background of people going to that school as I did when I was in high school. But coming to Marshall, I really feel like I have experienced so much more diversity than I would have in that area. It's definitely changed my view of the world, and me as a person. I have learned more about Black culture and about Appalachia more than I would have ever dreamed of, and that definitely has made me have a lot more pride in myself and who I am and where I fit in the world.
What about coming to Marshall or seeking higher education helped you understand or develop your identity as an Appalachian or as a Black Appalachian, maybe even a Black Appalachian woman?
So I took a few courses that were focused on Appalachia. I took an Appalachian literature course where I learned about Appalachian poets, and that was a concept I had never heard of before, and it made me definitely feel like I fit into a box that I didn't know before even existed. And someone who loves to write, I realized that I really love to write about West Virginia. So being put in those positions definitely exposed me to a broader range of how I saw myself, and that was a really cool thing to experience.
So, in this article, Capitalizing on Distinctiveness, Brian Hoey talks about initiatives in Huntington that have been taking place in the era of what they're calling the new economy. Essentially, Huntington is finding out that, along with a lot of other regions in Appalachia, we can no longer rely on industrialism for economic development. And as a result, we're in need of some new ideas and progressive initiatives that can increase economic vitality. So I was just wondering, on this idea of capitalizing on distinctiveness, what do you think Huntington brings to the table? And what can the rest of Appalachia learn from Huntington's use of distinctiveness in creating a new economy?
So I think Huntington is moving in the right direction as they are focusing a lot of their efforts towards the arts in this area, and it is turning out to be more lucrative than people would expect, I think. There is a lot to be appreciative of what is made inside of the state.
In wrapping up our interview, I wanted to bring the discussion back to The Vanishing Appalachian: How to Whiten the Problem by Leon F. Williams. How can we preserve and, at the same time, give acknowledgement to the Black history of Appalachia? Maybe even more importantly, what can be done to encourage Black Appalachians to stay in the region? Back to Leon F. Williams, the first article that we discussed. What can we do to preserve Black Appalachia's history and revive its place in the region? Let everybody know about its remarkable contributions.
Well, for starters, I think we need to put the topic on the table because it's not even up for discussion right now as far as Black Appalachian history goes. It should start in our public school system because it's unbelievable that you have to take West Virginia Studies in elementary school, you have to take it again in middle school, and it never touches base, at least not when I was taking the classes, never took the time to tell us about Carter G. Woodson and how he's considered to be the father of Black History Month, and he's from Huntington, West Virginia. I did not learn that until I came to Marshall and went to college. It wasn't until I was sitting in a college classroom that I even learned about Emmett Till. And I really feel like there's not enough emphasis put on Black history as a whole in our public school system, which trickles down to where do Black people fit in Appalachian culture and where they fit in West Virginia if we don't put them in a high enough importance of their history to be taught more in the public school system. I think representation matters is a phrase that can be used in so many different ways, but representation in arts, in paintings, or whether it be in writing, where you see more of the Black Appalachian and what their life is like, I think that arts and writing specifically can be a form of activism and a way to bring attention to these issues.